Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a crazy 72 hours. About 3 weeks ago. You see, this video has been written right after I went semi-viral on Reddit, but my old camera lens decided that I'm not good enough to work with, so it abandoned me right as I was preparing to film. Long story short, Reddit gods looked down at me from the clouds like Mufasa and said, "Son, you deserve more." And now I have a subscriber count that's 10x of what it used to be and a website that went from 30 average views on a good day to a little over 10,000. What? As any normal human would, I spent a couple hours basking in the light of my greatness and ego that's now large enough to have its own gravity pull. The real goldmine here were not the internet points, surprisingly enough. Big reach gives big visibility. Big visibility means people have opinions and they're not afraid to voice them. But I'm not scared, that was actually something I was counting on. So I've taken every single comment, put them all in an Excel spreadsheet and grouped them based on suggestions and requests. And what I found out is that men only want one thing, and it's disgusting. If you're new here and have no idea what's going on, I'm Viktor Vee and I run ViktorVee.com. I teach music production there for free. The issue in this scenario is that I've purposefully avoided the most important pillar in any self-learning ecosystem. A beginner's guide, a sort of roadmap on how to go from zero to hero. And if getting that answered is a defining factor in a life or death scenario, you can skip to this timestamp. Otherwise, don't. Stay with me. It's not an ad read. It's the insane journey writing this thing took me on. A beginner's guide is seemingly a really simple thing to outline. From a logical perspective, you start from ground zero and build everything on top of each other as if it were a Jenga tower. Let's entertain that thought, and I'm going to show you why it doesn't work, and it's more fitting of an MC Escher work of art than an actual solution to our problem. This means starting with audio basics of how sound is formed, waveforms, physics and digital related information that you will run into sooner or later, whether during setup or like later down the line. We're talking stuff like audio codecs, sample rate, bit depth, and then after that discussion is settled, you move into equipment, hardware and software with several chapters in each, trying to figure out what is the best combination that's right for you to have a comfortable experience. But if we're following that, then we absolutely have to talk about the environment we work in, our actual rooms, and now we're in this bubble. Room problems, solutions, thousands of dollars poured in to solve those problems. But wait, what are we doing here? It's a cul-de-sac, we need to get here. The actual room is a tangent on what we actually are supposed to be following. So let's backtrack, let's get back to reality and talk about music theory, chords, progressions, intervals, timing, and only then, after we go through at least 3 stages of separation and 5 stages of grief, are we allowed to press a button to make a funny sound. See the issue? When a learning path is followed logically, the path of least friction involves days and potentially weeks of piling information on top of other information before you even start talking about actual music. It was a no-go. I didn't want to do it, let alone some poor soul that wants to have fun making funny sounds. So back to the drawing board that is then. Every time I reached the point where I was seemingly happy with what I came up with, zooming out and looking at it from a bird's eye view always reveals some kind of critical flaw I had overlooked. I had kinda let my own path and what I know now cloud the judgment on whether that's a good road to travel along for everybody. Now, under the same post that started this discussion, this comment stood out. Interesting. Technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just recreate it and we'll pretend this never happened. The idea of having a skill tree is an interesting one, and I was ready to go with it, but while it definitely cut down on what can be considered filler right now, it was still way too strict for my liking. So that very same evening, I was playing The Binding of Isaac and needed some background noise, so I've decided to click on a video that's been shoved down my throat by YouTube for a while now. It's about chemistry. I know nothing about chemistry. I've never googled any chemistry related things in my entire life. So thank your algorithm for that. I'll link the video in the description because it's absolutely fantastic. The overall gist of it is the insane race towards the discovery of new periodic table elements, and the lengths to which people would go for their name to be associated with success in that field. Now, at one point, scientists have stumbled upon a metaphorical wall, an edge of the universe, if you will. They calculated where the next plot of land was, but it would be too time and resource consuming to get to it one step at a time. So instead, they tried to shoot as far as they could, to try and discover things retrospectively. Bingo. So if logic fails us, let's attempt to get to our destination in a different way. Making music is a vague goalpost, and no two people will interpret it the same way, so we need something more concrete and tangible. How about this? I want to publish my music for people to enjoy it. Sounds good? Now we are getting somewhere. Let's then reverse engineer that statement and figure out the steps along the way that we would need to follow to get there. And before we do, let me just say that I'm going to outline the path without going into too much detail just yet. I'll explore those details in the next section of the video. The act of publishing something is as simple as pressing a single button that says publish on it, be it YouTube, SoundCloud, whatever. Before you click that, you have to make sure that your song is mastered. Mastering is the first notch on our ruler then. If we want to define mastering, we can say that it's the process of preparing the audio to be exported and distributed. It's the finishing touches we apply, be it by slightly tweaking the volume to make sure our music complies with different requirements of the industry, or simply making sure that the overall listening experience is the way it's being intended. Well then, what precedes it? Mastering is a process that's directly following the mixing stage of our production. It's fair to say that once the mixing stage is reached, it's a pretty straightforward path to follow to actually have results to publish. This is where all the ideas funnel and merge together. Mixing, in essence, is the headache generator. It requires sharp ears, good decision making, and a steady hand. It's where you're role playing as a surgeon. This is the section where you roll up your sleeves and work on your music by cutting away everything that's not intended, emphasizing what you like, and making sure to stitch every element together properly, so that the Frankenstein's monster that you've built doesn't fall apart the second it tries to stand up. It's the stage that requires a lot of juggling things around, so most beginners feel discouraged here. It's a really confusing part and involves a lot of second guessing yourself, even more so if you don't know what you're actually looking for. But as usual, I'm getting ahead of myself. To stitch things together, we need things to stitch in the first place. Here we come to the composition and arrangement phase of our production. This is where you start with a blank canvas and throw things at it until something sticks. This is also where you take the things that sound good and arrange them into different song sections. This is the part that people think of when they hear the words music production. If I were to ask 10 different people about what they think to be the most difficult stage in production between writing and mixing, I'd get 10 different answers with different levels of nuance to them, and at least one saying, "What are you doing in my house? I'm going to call the police." It's because a lot of the times people treat light mixing as part of the writing process without necessarily a clean separation between the two. I think doing so is a waste of time and focus, but you know, the world is your oyster. Then, to make things, we need a way to do so, which boils down to the equipment in use. You need something to make music on, something to make music with, and a way to hear what you're doing. And just like that, we skipped over all of the filler. We're going to talk about those things when we actually run into them. And this skeleton leaves you with the most straightforward path from zero to actually getting your hands on music. I like this. This is good. On paper, it's simple enough, so now let's talk about what you're going to actually do about it. You need something to make music on, something to make music with, and a way to hear what you're doing. Wise words. In this day and age, whatever device you're watching this on is enough to be considered the mothership of the entire operation. I'm sure there's probably a way to make things work on a smart fridge nowadays, but whatever your device is, you're going to need a DAW, a digital audio workstation. There's plenty of them. All of them are good enough, so don't get too caught up on a choice. There's demos of everything, so try everything to see what you like the most. When it comes down to advice, I would probably advise Ableton Live or FL Studio, because most music tutorials out there are made with them, so they'll be easy to follow and replicate. But I repeat, all those are great, so this choice is purely subjective and will not influence the quality of your music. A good question is whether the Windows versus Mac debate matter here. Not really. Most DAWs are available on both, and mobile users, you have these. Ding ding ding, I personally settled on Ableton Live. Next, something to make music with. If you play guitar, grab your guitar. If you play piano, then one of these will come in handy. But do you absolutely need either? No. We have what's called virtual instruments. There are free ones, there are paid ones, and if you want to use them to the fullest extent of their potential, you will want something like this to control them. Now, it doesn't mean you cannot control virtual instruments without this. It's just that, you know, it will be more comfortable if you do. A thing I will always recommend is getting a microphone, even if you don't do vocals. Getting one means that you can now utilize the entire world as your sound library, and you can use something like a water bottle or your beard trimmer for sound effects. Recording your own sounds makes it really easy for your song to stand out, since you are utilizing a sound library that nobody else in the world has access to. Now, unfortunately, microphones have a really bad habit of coming with a weird cable. You can get microphones that connect via USB, but I would advise not to. They're limited by the converters that are inside of them, as opposed to XLR microphones that aren't limited by them, since you can connect them to any converter you like. This connection, which is called the XLR connection, will be superior. But you can't just shove an XLR connection into your laptop. You will need something to connect it to. Audio interface. It's a metal box that acts as a hub for all of your devices. You can plug in your headphones, guitar, microphones, speakers. Using this means that your equipment will function to the very best of its ability, and it's not limited by anything else. The third and final point is a way to listen to what you're doing. It's either headphones or speakers. Speakers are preferred when we're talking about producing music at the highest level, but the main issue in that scenario is your room. How good your speakers sound will be limited by how good your room sounds. Even more so, not everybody has the luxury of being able to work on speakers all the time. Neighbors, time of day, yada yada. Headphones it is then. Headphone enthusiasts, please cover your ears, because the way I'm going to summarize and admit a lot of things will be painful. There's 3 types of headphones based on their size: over-ear, on-ear, and in-ear. The most useful and comfortable are the over-ear ones. Don't underestimate comfort. You're going to be using headphones a lot, so it makes sense to grab something that you will be comfortable in. Then there's 2 types of headphones based on their cups: open back and closed back. Closed backs are great for recording stuff and when working at night. All of the sound is self-contained within the ear cup. Very little gets in, very little gets out. Open backs will bleed sound into the environment, but they do feel like the music is in 3D, like it's everywhere around you. If you can only have one pair, go for open backs. They will be the most useful to you as far as music production goes. Closed backs are usually less accurate in the sound reproduction because of their closed cup. The sound just bounces around and frequencies get skewed a little bit. At the end of the day, both are useful, and if you can't get your hands on one, the other one is fine. Ultimately, what I've told you is a gross oversimplification of many decades of audio engineering. There is more to it, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to stop here as to not confuse you further. We can talk more in depth in a separate video. The important point I wanted to get across in this is that the preferred type of headphone I would advise you to get is an open ear, open back pair. These are my AKG K712s. They carried me through years of studio work. Not sponsored, because you know that AKG lives in a farm upstate now. But if you cannot buy new headphones or already have a pair you like, just use those. Just keep in mind that grabbing an over-ear open back pair is one of the first upgrades to your setup I would recommend. Next, you can plug your headphones into your laptop, but some headphones can be more power hungry than others. That's the ohm parameter you see on the spec sheet. The higher it is, the more power is required to run them. Or more of a real-life example, plugging power-hungry headphones into a laptop, for example, will cap the maximum amount of volume they can reproduce. So to get the most out of those, you will still need the audio interface. The same one you plug your microphone in. Yes, we circle back around. A good question is how much ohm is too much, or rather at what point you absolutely need an audio interface to drive them. The general consensus from what I've seen is that anything below 80 ohms would be fine to use without an audio interface. These, for example, are 62 ohms, and I've happened to use them without an audio interface just fine. Okay, now you have everything you need equipment-wise, so now off to the production stage. Let's all agree on one thing: blank canvases are scary. If you have absolutely no idea about what you're doing or where to even start, I would advise you to follow some videos of people simply working. I have picked out 3 excellent ones. They're gonna be in the description below, so show them some love. Thankfully, compared to video editing, audio production is much less reliant on hotkeys, so it's easier to follow and replicate. You will only need to know a couple of things before you visit them. First up is the interface of any DAW. This is pretty much universal stuff. This is the timeline where things happen. The more to the right you go, the further you progress in time. I don't think I need to explain how time works. I don't want to get too existential here. Now, have you ever heard somebody counting out 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, like a drummer at a concert? Each number being counted out is a beat. And every 4 beats, we have a measure or a bar. That's why it repeats 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a new measure every time we go back around to 1. It doesn't necessarily need to end at 4, but then 99% of the time it will. Don't worry about that too much right now. This is more advanced music production stuff. This is arguably the most important part of the DAW you need to be aware of right now. It's a piano roll. It allows you to pick notes and sequence those notes in time. But I want you to follow the path of least resistance now, remember? Okay, we're going to talk about notes in a moment. I do advise you to watch the videos I recommended first. And if you did, let's then start writing ourselves. Wait, what do I mean by that? After all, I told you nothing about the actual process. Well, that's about to change. Everything I'm talking about next is absolutely not sponsored and is a free resource I have used in the past. The resource is called Looperman, and it's essentially people submitting free loops that they made. Loops are made to loop after they finish, so you can drag one and repeat it several times without it sounding odd. So pick some of them that you like and drag them around. I have a bass here, some chords, and drums. They might not be the same length, so you have to pay attention to the parameter of BPM. This means beats per minute, and it's essentially how fast they're being played. You want them to be the same BPM if you want them to sound good together. You also want them to have the same key. A key or a scale is simply a selection of notes that work well together. For now, simply choose the ones with the same key and drag them together. Stack them up one on top of another, and there you go, you made something that has never been done before. Congratulations, you made music. A good next step is clicking on the Effects tab. There's going to be loads and loads of effects you can add to your music, making it sound all weird and interesting. Some are pretty straightforward, some are more difficult to figure out by yourself. Stay tuned and click the big red, it's not red anymore, click the underwhelmingly sized white subscribe button to catch that video. But relying on loops can only get you so far. It's quite limiting because you are relying on other people to do your work for you. But why wait for others to come up with something cool when you can do that? If making music means putting different loops together, let's learn to make those loops ourselves. Sounds good? Only now music theory kicks in. Music theory is an amalgam of loose rules of what works and what doesn't. I will not annoy you with music theory in this video, it'll already take me like a whole month to render. You can also check out my website, ViktorVee.com. I have some music theory stuff on there that's being overhauled right now, but if you click the big music theory selector, the basic step is what I want you to know. It's going to look a little different in a couple of weeks, but it's still like the general gist of it. Don't feel like you have to memorize everything. A loose idea of what's happening is good enough, just so you can look things up when you get lost. So, practice your music theory. Watch some videos in the meantime that I'm producing mine. The next step would be learning about form and the umbrella rules of music, song production, and arrangement. Luckily for you, I have already made videos about it. The link to the playlist and the website section is in the description below. This is where we're talking about the most vague concepts we're ever going to cover, but understanding them means that you understand how music actually is supposed to work. And this wasn't taught to me when I started. I had to distill that information painstakingly by trial and error. Only a couple of years later, I discovered that it was an actual thing that good music production places teach. And all of this is available in the production section of my website. As of January of 2023 at this point, I'm missing a huge chunk of it, but it's coming. I have left the nameplates of what I'm going to be teaching there, so if you don't want to wait for it being available from yours truly, you can always look them up by yourself and other people who teach it. This brings me to a very, very important thing. Study other people. Pick apart the songs you like, find out the instruments they use and what emotions they evoke, because by studying others, you become better at doing it yourself. Next logical step after making sure your song is the way you want it to be is mixing. Mixing, as we said, is the process of making sure your song doesn't fall apart. Let's say that a song is a puzzle, and while the production stage is finding out what pieces look nice next to each other, the mixing stage is turning them the right way to make them fit one into another. Again, as of January 2023, the mixing section is hasn't been started yet. That's embarrassing. What a better reason to subscribe. But I'm not gonna leave you hanging. There's a good selection of people who talk about mixing extensively, and by watching them, you're bound to pick up some of their skill as well. Here they are. Next up, mastering. Mastering comes after mixing, and it's the final touches on your music before it releases to the public. It's little adjustments to make sure that everything works, sounds, and transitions as intended. It's also when the overall volume of the composition gets cemented according to different requirements. Different streaming platforms usually have different volume criteria to meet, and this is where different copies of the song are made to fit each one of them. Again, I haven't started this yet. These people talk about it extensively, and they're fantastic. Okay, I will get it done. I only have 24 hours in a day. Give me a break. After that is done, you have a perfectly good song to upload and for the world to hear. There is a how to earn money from your music aspect to discuss, but I think that's getting a little too ahead of ourselves. I will gladly do a video about that, but for now, stick to making music and learning more about it. Get comfortable with it, get comfortable talking about it. After all, the best way to learn something is to surround yourself with like-minded people that share the same passion. And don't be afraid to fail, because we all fail. And that being said, there is one thing I still need to mention. It's your room. You will inevitably stumble upon the room acoustics topics when discussing music, or when trying to get rid of the annoying sounds when recording something yourself. See, the sound bounces around hard surfaces, and keeping those reflections in check is the key to getting a good sound out of your room. If you want to work on music at the highest level, you will have to build an environment that accurately reflects what you're doing. Do you have to worry about that right now? Absolutely not. You have bigger fish to fry right now. But if you want to use speakers and plan to record in your room, give these articles a general read on my website. The entire section deals with how you should prepare your room to get the most of it. And that's pretty much everything I have for you today. Please stay tuned for the next video, where I outline my video plan for the next 6 months. As usual, have fun, visit ViktorVee.com if you want to learn more. As of right now, there's more stuff there than on this channel, but thankfully I have a lot of free time right now, so I should be able to work on the video aspect of my work a little more. While we're at it, I also have a Patreon now, so if you'd like to support me there, thank you. I also have an Instagram account I started just now, so come and say hi, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!